In a quiet little town surrounded by dense woods and winding rivers, there lived a young boy who loved adventure. He wasn't the kind of kid who stayed indoors glued to screens. Instead, he spent most of his days exploring the outdoors. Whether it was climbing trees, chasing butterflies, or digging holes in the backyard, this boy had an insatiable curiosity about the world around him. One morning, as sunlight poured through the curtains, the boy woke up feeling strange. His face felt unusually heavy, and when he looked in the mirror, he gasped. One side of his face was swollen, puffy, and tender to touch. At first he thought maybe he'd been stung by a bee while playing outside the day before. But no matter how hard he tried to remember, he couldn't recall any insect buzzing near him. Confused and a little scared, he ran to his mom. His mother took one look at his face and immediately grew worried. She gently pressed on the swollen area, asking if it hurt. The boy nodded, wincing slightly. "We need to get you checked out," she said firmly, grabbing her car keys. As they drove to the local clinic, the boy stared out the window, wondering what could possibly be wrong with him. Was it just a bug bite, or was it something more serious? At the clinic, the nurse led them into a small examination room. The doctor arrived shortly after, wearing a friendly smile that didn't quite mask the concern in his eyes. After asking a few questions about the boy's symptoms, the doctor began examining his face closely. He shone a light, felt around the swollen area, and even asked the boy to open his mouth wide. But nothing seemed out of the ordinary, at least not at first glance. "This doesn't look like a typical allergic reaction," the doctor muttered, scratching his head. "And it's not an abscess either." He paused for a moment, thinking deeply. Then, turning to the boy's mother, he suggested they visit a bigger hospital in the city. There, specialists with better equipment might be able to figure out what was going on. Hearing this made the boy's stomach churn with anxiety. Why couldn't anyone tell what was wrong? What if it was something really bad? The drive to the city hospital felt endless. The boy sat silently in the back seat, clutching his favorite toy, a stuffed animal, for comfort. His mother kept glancing at him through the rearview mirror, trying her best to reassure him. "Don't worry, sweetheart," she said softly. "They'll find out what's causing this and we'll fix it." Though her words were meant to calm him, the uncertainty lingered in the air like a heavy cloud. When they finally reached the hospital, the bustling environment was overwhelming. Nurses rushed past, wheeling patients on stretchers, while doctors hurried down hallways clutching clipboards. They waited patiently in the emergency room until a kind-faced nurse called them in. After explaining the situation, the boy was whisked away for a series of tests. Blood samples were taken, X-rays were done, and eventually, he was sent for an MRI scan, a procedure that left him lying still inside a noisy machine for what felt like forever. Hours passed, and the family waited, anxiously in a small, sterile waiting room. Every time a doctor walked by, the boy's heart raced, hoping for answers. Finally, a radiologist appeared, holding a set of scans. His expression was unreadable as he spoke to the attending physician in hushed tones. Whatever they were discussing, it clearly wasn't simple. The boy watched his parents exchange nervous glances, their faces etched with worry. Eventually, the doctor approached them with a mix of seriousness and intrigue. Pointing to one of the scans, he explained that there was something unusual, a faint shadow near the boy's jawline. It wasn't clear what it was, but it definitely didn't belong there. The news sent a wave of shock through the family. A shadow? Inside his face? How could that even happen? The doctor assured them that surgery would be necessary to investigate further and remove whatever was causing the swelling. As preparations for the surgery began, the boy couldn't shake off the fear gnawing at him. Would it hurt? What if they found something terrible? His parents stayed by his side, holding his hand and reminding him how strong he was. Despite his nerves, he managed a weak smile, drawing courage from their unwavering support. Little did he know, the surgery would reveal something so bizarre that it would leave everyone stunned and change his life in ways he never imagined. "Let me know if you'd like me to continue expanding." The day of the surgery arrived, and the boy was both nervous and exhausted. He hadn't slept much the night before, his mind racing with questions. What could possibly be hiding inside his face? Was it something dangerous? Or just a weird twist of fate? His parents did their best to keep him calm, but even they looked tense as they walked into the hospital early that morning. The nurses were kind and gentle as they prepared him for the operation. They gave him a light blue gown to wear and explained every step of what would happen next. "You're going to be just fine," one of them said with a warm smile. "We'll take good care of you." The boy nodded, clutching his stuffed animal tightly. It was his lucky charm, and he wasn't letting go of it until the very last moment. Before being wheeled into the operating room, the anesthesiologist came to talk to him. She had a soothing voice and promised that he'd fall asleep quickly and wake up feeling better. "Just count backward from 10, she said cheerfully. "By the time you reach 7, you'll be dreaming about your favorite place." The boy closed his eyes and started counting, holding on to the hope that when he woke up everything would make sense again. Outside the operating room, his parents sat in silence, their hands clasped together tightly. The wait felt endless. Every tick of the clock seemed louder than the last. Nurses occasionally passed by, offering reassuring smiles, but no one could give them the answers they desperately wanted. All they could do was sit, pray, and trust that the doctors knew what they were doing. Inside the operating room, the surgical team worked meticulously. They carefully made an incision near the swollen area and began exploring the tissue beneath. The skin. At first, nothing unusual appeared, just normal muscle and fat. But then one of the surgeons froze. There, embedded deep within the boy's cheek, was something small and foreign. It took a few moments for everyone in the room to process what they were seeing. "It's wood?" one of the assistants whispered, incredulous. Sure enough, lodged firmly in the boy's cheek was a tiny splinter, no bigger than a grain of rice. How it got there or how long it had been there was anyone's guess. The surgeon carefully extracted it using delicate tools, placing it into a small container for further examination. Once the splinter was removed, the swelling around the area began to subside almost immediately. After what felt like hours, the surgeon finally emerged from the operating room. The boy's parents jumped to their feet, their faces filled with anticipation. "It's over," the doctor said with a relieved smile. "We found the cause of the swelling, a small piece of wood. We've removed it, and everything looks good." Hearing those words brought tears of relief to their eyes. Their son was going to be okay. When the boy woke up in the recovery room, groggy but alive, the first thing he saw was his parents' smiling faces. "How are you feeling, champ?" his dad asked softly. The boy blinked a few times, still trying to shake off the haze of anesthesia. "My face feels lighter," he mumbled, touching his cheek gingerly. His mom laughed through her tears, hugging him tightly. For the first time in days, they all felt a weight lift off their shoulders. Over the next few days, the boy recuperated in the hospital. Nurses checked on him regularly, making sure the incision healed properly and that there were no signs of infection. Meanwhile, his parents couldn't stop marveling at the strange turn of events. A piece of wood? Inside his cheek? It sounded like something out of a storybook, not real life. They gently questioned the boy about whether he remembered anything unusual happening recently. At first, the boy shook his head, but then as he replayed memories of his outdoor adventures in his mind, something clicked. "I think I know," he said slowly. "A couple of weeks ago, I was climbing this big tree near the river. I slipped and fell against a branch. It scratched me, but it didn't seem serious, so I didn't tell anyone." His parents exchanged glances, piecing together the puzzle. That must have been when the tiny splinter embedded itself in his cheek without anyone noticing. As news of the bizarre incident spread, people couldn't help but be fascinated. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers who heard the story marveled at how such a small thing could cause so much trouble. Local newspapers picked up the tale, dubbing it the mystery of the swollen face. Social media buzzed with comments from people sharing their own odd medical experiences. Some joked about checking their cheeks for random objects, while others expressed awe at how resilient the human body can be. For the boy, becoming the center of attention was a mix of embarrassment and pride. At school, classmates bombarded him with questions, some curious, others teasing. But instead of shrinking away, he embraced it. He realized that his story, though unusual, had a silver lining. It reminded people to pay attention to even the smallest details. Sometimes the tiniest things can have the biggest impact. His recovery was smooth, and within weeks he was back to his old self, running, playing, and exploring the outdoors once again. But this experience left a lasting impression on him. He became more cautious, always double-checking for scratches or cuts after rough play. More importantly, he developed a newfound appreciation for his health and the importance of seeking help when something feels wrong. The boy's family also grew closer through the ordeal. Facing uncertainty together had strengthened their bond, reminding them of how precious life is. They often joked about naming the splinter. Tiny Tim became its unofficial title, and displayed the container holding the tiny piece of wood on a shelf at home. It served as a quirky reminder of the strangest chapter in their lives. Though the swelling was gone and his face returned to normal, the boy carried the lesson of resilience with him. He learned that sometimes life throws unexpected challenges our way, but with courage and support, we can overcome them. And who knows? Maybe someday he'd look back on this experience and laugh, grateful for the bizarre twist of fate that turned him into a local legend. Let me know if you'd like me to expand. As the weeks went by, life slowly returned to normal for the boy and his family. The swelling was completely gone, and his cheek healed perfectly, leaving only a faint scar that would fade with time. But the story of the tiny piece of wood lodged in his face didn't fade, it grew bigger. People couldn't stop talking about it. Neighbors, teachers, classmates, and even strangers who heard about it were fascinated by how something so small could cause such a big problem. The boy's mom started sharing the story with anyone who would listen, often pulling out the little container holding the splinter as proof. She'd hold it up and say, "This is what caused all the trouble, can you believe it?" Everyone would lean in closer, examining the tiny fragment of wood like it was some rare artifact from an archaeological dig. Some people laughed, others shook their heads in disbelief, but no one could deny that it was an incredible tale. Word spread quickly around town. Soon local newspapers picked up the story, running headlines like "Boy's Swollen Face Leads" to "Shocking Discovery" and "How a Tiny Splinter Made Big News." Reporters came knocking on their door, eager to interview the family. At first, the boy felt shy about being in the spotlight, but his parents encouraged him to share his experience. "It's not every day someone becomes famous for having a piece of wood stuck in their face," his dad joked, which always made the boy laugh. During one interview, the boy sat next to his mom as she recounted the whole ordeal, from the morning. He woke up with a swollen face to the surgery that revealed the culprit. The reporter asked the boy how he felt now that everything was over. After thinking for a moment, he replied, "I'm glad it's out, but I still think it's kinda cool. Like, who else can say they had a splinter in their face for weeks without knowing?" That answer became the highlight of the article. When it was published, the quote went viral online. People loved the boy's positive attitude and light-hearted take on what could have been a scary situation. Social media platforms buzzed with memes and jokes inspired by his story. One popular post showed a cartoon of a kid climbing a tree with the caption, "When you fall off a branch and carry a souvenir for weeks." Another read, "Nature's way of saying, don't forget me." But beyond the humor, the story also sparked important conversations. Parents began reminding their kids to be more careful while playing outdoors. Teachers used the incident as an example during safety lessons, emphasizing the importance of checking for injuries after accidents. Even doctors weighed in, discussing how unusual cases like this remind us of the human body's complexity and resilience. For the boy, the newfound attention brought mixed feelings. On one hand, he enjoyed being recognized and hearing people call him the Splinter Kid. It made him feel special, like he had a unique story no one else could claim. On the other hand, he sometimes wished things could go back to the way they were before, when he was just an ordinary kid who loved climbing trees and chasing frogs. Still, he handled the attention with grace, always smiling politely whenever someone mentioned his swollen face. His classmates were especially intrigued. During recess, they'd gather around him, asking endless questions. Did it hurt when they took it out? Were you scared during the surgery? Do you think there's another one hiding somewhere? The boy answered patiently, enjoying the chance to relive the adventure through storytelling. He even started adding dramatic pauses and sound effects to make the tale more exciting. By the end of each retelling, his friends would cheer, clapping, as if he'd just finished an epic quest. Despite the fun, the experience left a deeper mark on the boy than he initially realized. He began noticing things he hadn't paid attention to before, how a scratch on his arm could turn into something worse if ignored, or how even the smallest details mattered when it came to health. These realizations made him more mindful, not just about his own well-being but also about others. If a classmate complained of feeling unwell, he'd encourage them to tell an adult. If someone tripped and fell, he'd insist they check for cuts or bruises. His parents noticed this change in him and couldn't have been prouder. They saw how the ordeal had shaped him into a more thoughtful and responsible young person. One evening, as they sat together at the dinner table, his mom said, "You know, this whole thing might have been scary, but it taught us something valuable. Sometimes the smallest things can teach us the biggest lessons." The boy nodded, chewing thoughtfully on a piece of bread. "Yeah," he agreed, "and maybe it happened for a reason. Maybe it's supposed to help me do something important later." His dad raised an eyebrow, curious. "Like what?" "I don't know yet," the boy admitted with a shrug. "But I feel like I want to help people, like maybe I could be a doctor, or something. You know, so I can figure out weird stuff like this for other kids." His parents exchanged proud glances. Though he was still young, the idea of helping others clearly resonated with him. They decided to nurture this newfound ambition, encouraging him to read books about science and medicine and watch documentaries about the human body. Who knows? Maybe this strange twist of fate was the beginning of a lifelong passion. As months passed, the initial buzz around the boy's story began to die down. Life moved forward and people turned their attention to other things. But for the boy and his family, the memory remained fresh. The tiny splinter, now safely stored in its container, served as a constant reminder of resilience, curiosity, and the unexpected ways life can surprise us. One afternoon, while flipping through a photo album, the boy stumbled upon pictures taken during his recovery. There he was, lying in the hospital bed, looking pale but brave. Beside him were his parents, smiling despite the worry in their eyes. He smiled too, realizing how much they had all grown from the experience. It wasn't just about the splinter anymore. It was about the strength they found together and the bond that deepened because of it. Let me know if you'd like me to continue expanding. As time went on, the boy's life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The novelty of being known as the Splinter Kid faded, but the lessons he learned from the experience stayed with him. He began to see the world differently, not just as a place full of adventures waiting to be explored, but also as a place where small actions could have big consequences. Whether it was climbing trees or helping someone in need, he started paying closer attention to details that others might overlook. One day, while walking home from school, the boy noticed an elderly neighbor struggling to carry groceries up her porch steps. Her hands were full and she looked like she might drop something at any moment. Without thinking twice, he ran over to help. "Here, let me take those," he said cheerfully, grabbing the heavier bags. The woman smiled gratefully, thanking him for his kindness. As they chatted briefly, she mentioned how hard it had become for her to do simple tasks since her arthritis flared up. That evening, the boy couldn't stop thinking about their conversation. He realized how easy it was to lend a hand when someone needed it, and how much of a difference it could make. It reminded him of his own journey, how doctors, nurses, and even strangers had come together to help figure out what was wrong with his face. That sense of community and care had left a lasting impression on him. The next day, he approached his parents with an idea. "What if I start helping people around the neighborhood?" he asked excitedly. "Like maybe I could mow lawns or rake leaves for neighbors who can't do it themselves." His parents exchanged proud glances. They loved seeing this newfound sense of purpose in him. "That's a wonderful idea," his mom said. "Why don't you start small and see how it goes?" Over the following weeks, the boy threw himself into helping others. On weekends, he'd visit elderly neighbors, offering to do chores they found difficult. Sometimes it was carrying groceries. Other times it was pulling weeds from their gardens or shoveling snow off their driveways during winter. Word spread quickly among the residents, and soon people were calling him the Little Helper. Though he didn't expect anything in return, many neighbors insisted on giving him small tokens of gratitude, a cookie here, a kind note there. Each gesture made him feel good inside, reinforcing the joy of giving back. His growing reputation as a helper wasn't limited to physical tasks. At school, he became the go-to person whenever classmates needed advice or support. If someone got hurt on the playground, he was the first to rush over with a bandage and comforting words. If a friend struggled with homework, he'd stay after class to explain concepts in simpler terms. Teachers began noticing his efforts too, praising him for his maturity and empathy. One teacher even told him, "You've got a real gift for making people feel better." This praise inspired the boy to think bigger. What if he could turn his passion for helping others into something more formal? He remembered his earlier dream of becoming a doctor, someone who solved mysteries inside the human body and helped people heal. But now he saw that helping didn't always require a medical degree. Even small acts of kindness could change lives. With his parents' encouragement, he decided to organize a community event called Helping Hands Day. The idea was simple. Everyone in the neighborhood would come together to assist those who needed it most. Flyers were printed and distributed, inviting people to join in activities like painting fences, cleaning parks, and fixing broken toys for kids whose families couldn't afford new ones. To his delight, dozens of neighbors signed up to participate. On the day of the event, the streets buzzed with energy. Kids ran around collecting trash, adults worked side by side repairing old benches, and laughter filled the air. The boy led a team of volunteers tasked with planting flowers in the local park. As they dug holes and placed colorful blooms into the soil, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was what teamwork looked like, people coming together to create something beautiful. At the end of the day, the entire community gathered for a picnic to celebrate their hard work. The mayor showed up unexpectedly, shaking hands and congratulating everyone on their dedication. When it was the boy's turn to speak, he stood nervously in front of the crowd, clutching a microphone. After taking a deep breath, he began sharing his story, the swollen face, the surgery, and the tiny splinter that changed everything. "I used to think my story was just about a weird thing that happened to me," he said, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach. "But now I realize it's about more than that. It's about how we never know what challenges lie ahead, or how we'll overcome them. And sometimes those challenges teach us to pay attention, to care, and to help each other." The crowd erupted into applause, cheering for the boy who had turned a bizarre incident into a catalyst for kindness. For the first time, he truly understood the impact one person could have. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about making the world a little brighter, one act of kindness at a time. That night, as he lay in bed reflecting on the day, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Helping others wasn't just something he enjoyed. It was something he wanted to dedicate his life to. Whether it was through medicine, volunteering, or simply being there for someone in need, he knew he had found his calling. And so, the boy, who once woke up with a swollen face, continued down a path shaped by resilience, curiosity, and compassion. Little did he know, his journey was only beginning. There were still countless stories waiting to unfold, stories of hope, connection, and the power of humanity to rise above even the strangest circumstances. Let me know if you'd like to continue expanding. The boy's newfound passion for helping others didn't stop with Helping Hands Day. In fact, that event was just the beginning of something much bigger. Inspired by the success of the community gathering, he decided to keep the momentum going. He started brainstorming ways to make kindness a regular part of life, not just for himself, but for everyone around him. What if people could find joy in helping others every single day? That thought sparked an idea that would soon take on a life of its own. One afternoon, while flipping through a magazine at the library, the boy stumbled upon an article about kindness clubs in schools across the country. These were groups where kids came together to perform small acts of kindness, like writing thank you notes to teachers or organizing fundraisers for local charities. The concept fascinated him. Why not start something similar in his own school? He imagined a club where students could work together to spread positivity and make their community stronger. Excited by the idea, the boy rushed home to share it with his parents. "What if we had a group at school where we did nice things for people?" he asked, his eyes lighting up with enthusiasm. His mom smiled warmly. "That sounds amazing," she said, "but starting a club takes planning and commitment. Are you ready for that?" The boy nodded eagerly. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to try. The next morning, armed with a notebook full of ideas, he approached his teacher during recess. "I want to start a kindness club," he announced confidently. His teacher raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Tell me more," she said, leaning forward. For the next 10 minutes, the boy explained his vision, a team of students working together to make their school and neighborhood a better place. By the end of his pitch, his teacher was smiling. "I think that's a wonderful idea," she said. "Let's talk to the principal and see how we can make it happen." With his teacher's support, the boy met with the school principal later that week. After hearing his proposal, the principal agreed to let him start the club, provided he could gather enough interest from fellow students. Over the weekend, the boy worked tirelessly on a poster campaign to promote the idea. He drew colorful pictures of hands holding hearts, surrounded by words like kindness, teamwork, and community. On Monday morning, the posters went up all over the school hallways, inviting students to join the new kindness crew. To his amazement, dozens of kids signed up within days. Some were drawn to the idea of making a difference. Others simply wanted to be part of something fun. Whatever their reasons, the boy felt a surge of pride as he watched the group grow. Their first meeting took place in the school cafeteria after classes ended. Sitting at a long table surrounded by eager faces, he stood up to address the crowd. "Welcome to the kindness crew," he began, his voice trembling slightly with nerves. "Our goal is simple: to do good things for people and make our school and town a happier place." From there, the group got straight to work. They brainstormed ideas for projects ranging from small gestures, like leaving encouraging notes in lockers, to larger initiatives, such as collecting canned goods for the food bank. One of their earliest successes came when they organized a compliment week at school. Students were encouraged to write kind messages on sticky notes and leave them on each other's desks. By the end of the week, the entire school buzzed with positivity. Teachers noticed fewer arguments in the hallways and more smiles in the classrooms. As the kindness crew gained popularity, so did the boy who started it. People began seeing him not just as the splinter kid, but as someone who truly cared about making the world better. Even adults in the community took notice. Local businesses donated supplies for the group's projects, and the mayor invited them to speak at a town council meeting. Standing behind a podium, the boy addressed a room full of grown-ups, explaining how even small acts of kindness could create big changes. When he finished speaking, the audience erupted into applause, leaving him grinning ear to ear. Despite the growing recognition, the boy remained humble. He often reminded his friends in the kindness crew that the focus should always be on helping others, not on getting attention. "It's not about us," he'd say during meetings. "It's about what we're doing for everyone else." This mindset kept the group grounded and motivated, ensuring that their efforts stayed genuine. One of their most ambitious projects came during the holiday season. The kindness crew decided to organize a toy drive for children whose families couldn't afford gifts. They set up collection boxes around town and spent weeks spreading the word. Flyers were handed out, social media posts were shared, and volunteers knocked on doors asking for donations. As the deadline approached, the group gathered in the school gymnasium to sort through the piles of toys they'd collected. Seeing the mountain of dolls, action figures, and board games made the boy's heart swell with pride. On the day of distribution, the kindness crew loaded up cars and vans, delivering the toys to shelters and community centers across town. Watching the faces of children light up as they unwrapped presents was one of the happiest moments of the boy's life. It reinforced everything he believed about the power of kindness. No matter how small the gesture, it could bring immense joy to someone in need. As the school year progressed, the kindness crew continued to thrive. New members joined and old ones stayed committed, united by their shared mission. The boy often reflected on how far he'd come since the days of waking up with a swollen face. Back then, he never imagined that such a strange incident would lead him down this path, but now looking back he realized it was all connected. The splinter had taught him resilience, curiosity, and gratitude, and those lessons had shaped the person he was becoming. By spring, the kindness crew had become a staple of the school. Their projects had touched countless lives, inspiring both young and old to pay it forward. The boy's dream of helping others wasn't just a dream anymore, it was a reality, and yet he knew there was still so much more to do. Every act of kindness planted a seed, and those seeds had the potential to grow into something extraordinary. Late one evening, as he sat on the porch watching the sunset, the boy thought about the future. Where would this journey take him next? Would he become a doctor, solving medical mysteries like the one he lived through? Or would he dedicate his life to organizing communities and spreading kindness on a larger scale? Whatever lay ahead, he felt ready to embrace it. Because deep down he understood something important. Life wasn't about avoiding challenges or staying comfortable. It was about facing those challenges head-on and using them to make yourself and the world around you better. And for the boy who once woke up with a swollen face, that realization was the greatest gift of all. Let me know if you'd like to continue expanding. As summer approached, the boy found himself reflecting on how much had changed since that fateful morning, when he woke up with a swollen face. What started as a bizarre medical mystery had blossomed into something far greater, a journey of self-discovery, compassion, and purpose. The kindness crew was thriving, but the boy knew there was still more work to be done. He wanted to take things to the next level, to inspire not just his school or town, but people beyond their small community. One evening, while scrolling through videos online, he stumbled upon a story about a teenager who had created a global movement to clean up beaches. The teen's efforts had inspired thousands of volunteers worldwide, proving that one person truly could spark change on a massive scale. The boy sat back, awestruck. If someone else could do it, why couldn't he? Maybe the lessons he'd learned from his own experience could resonate with others too. After all, everyone faced challenges, some big, some small, but every challenge carried the potential for growth. The idea began forming in his mind. What if he shared his story with a wider audience? Not just the part about the splinter, but everything it taught him about resilience, kindness, and finding purpose in unexpected places. He imagined writing letters, creating videos, or even speaking at events to encourage others to turn their struggles into opportunities to help those around them. It felt like a bold step, but the thought excited him more than anything else. The next day, he brought the idea to his parents over breakfast. "What if I told my story to people outside our town?" he asked, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. His dad raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "That's a great idea," he said, "but how would you do it?" The boy hesitated for a moment before replying, "I don't know yet. Maybe I could start with a video or write something online." His mom smiled warmly. "Whatever you choose, we'll support you." With their encouragement, the boy dove into planning. He decided to create a short video sharing his story, from the swollen face to the surgery, the recovery, and finally, the impact it had on his life. He spent hours drafting a script, making sure it was simple and relatable. He didn't want it to feel rehearsed or polished. Instead, he aimed for authenticity, hoping viewers would connect with his honesty. With a borrowed camera and some guidance from his tech-savvy uncle, he filmed the video in their backyard, surrounded by trees and sunlight. In the video, he spoke directly to the camera, his tone warm and conversational. "Hi," he began, rubbing the faint scar on his cheek. "You might think this is just a regular face, but trust me, it's been through a lot. A few months ago, I woke up with half my face swollen, and no one, including me, had any idea why. Turns out there was a tiny piece of wood stuck inside my cheek. Crazy, right?" He paused, letting the absurdity sink in before continuing. "But here's the thing. That little splinter taught me some big lessons. It showed me how important it is to pay attention to details, to ask for help when you need it, and most importantly, to use your experiences to make a difference. He went on to talk about the kindness crew and how helping others had become his mission. By the end of the video, he looked straight into the lens and said, "If a tiny splinter can change my life, imagine what you can do with yours." We all have challenges, but they don't have to define us. They can guide us toward something bigger. So go out there and make a difference. You never know whose life you might touch. When the video was finished, the boy uploaded it to a popular platform, nervously hitting publish and waiting for reactions. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, comments began rolling in. People from different corners of the world shared their thoughts, thanking him for his message and opening up about their own struggles. One commenter wrote, "Your story reminded me that even the smallest things can lead to big changes, thank you." Another added, "I've been feeling lost lately, but hearing your perspective gives me hope." The response overwhelmed him, not because of the praise, but because he realized his words were reaching people. Strangers were connecting with his story, finding inspiration in his journey. Teachers reached out, asking if they could show his video in class. Community leaders invited him to speak at events. Even local news outlets contacted him for interviews. Suddenly, the boy who once felt shy about being in the spotlight found himself embracing it, for the sake of spreading kindness. His newfound platform gave him an opportunity to expand the reach of the kindness crew. He collaborated with schools in neighboring towns, encouraging students to start their own chapters. Together, they organized joint projects, like planting trees along highways or hosting fundraisers for families affected by natural disasters. Each initiative strengthened the bond between communities, proving that acts of kindness transcended boundaries. One particularly memorable project involved partnering with a hospital to create care packages for children undergoing treatment. The boy rallied volunteers to collect items like coloring books, puzzles, and stuffed animals. They also included handwritten notes filled with messages of encouragement. On delivery day, the boy personally handed out the packages, watching as sick kids' faces lit up with joy. For many, these small gifts weren't just toys, they were reminders that someone cared. Despite the growing success, the boy remained grounded. He often reminded himself, and others, that kindness wasn't about grand gestures or seeking recognition. It was about showing up, even in small ways, and making someone's day a little brighter. Whether it was holding the door open for a stranger or sitting with someone who seemed lonely at lunch, every act mattered. As the months passed, the boy noticed subtle shifts within himself. He felt more confident, not because of the attention he received, but because he was living a life aligned with his values. Helping others had become second nature, woven into the fabric of his daily routine. And yet, he knew he still had room to grow. There were always new challenges to face, new lessons to learn, and new ways to spread positivity. One crisp autumn afternoon, as he walked home from school, he stopped to watch leaves swirl in the wind. A thought struck him. Life was like those leaves, constantly moving, unpredictable, and full of surprises. Sometimes those surprises were tough, like waking up with a swollen face. Other times they were beautiful, like discovering a passion for helping others. Either way, each moment carried the potential for growth. That night, as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the boy made a silent promise to himself. No matter where life took him, he would continue using his experiences to uplift others. Whether it was through medicine, teaching, or simply being kind, he vowed to leave the world better than he found it. Because deep down, he understood something profound. True fulfillment came not from what you achieved for yourself, but from what you gave to others. Let me know if you'd like to continue expanding. As the seasons changed and another year rolled by, the boy's influence continued to grow in ways he never imagined. What began as a quirky story about a swollen face and a tiny splinter had transformed into a movement that touched lives far beyond his small town. The kindness crew was thriving, and its impact rippled outward like waves on a pond. But for the boy, the journey wasn't just about numbers or achievements. It was about connection, heart, and making every moment count. One chilly winter morning, the boy woke up feeling grateful but restless. He'd spent months organizing projects, inspiring others, and sharing his story, yet something felt missing. It wasn't dissatisfaction, it was more like a quiet longing, a whisper nudging him to dig deeper to find new ways to make a difference. Sitting at the kitchen table with a steaming mug of hot chocolate, he jotted down thoughts in his notebook. How can I reach people who feel invisible? Who are struggling silently? That question stayed with him throughout the day. At school, during a break between classes, he noticed a classmate sitting alone in the corner of the library. She was staring blankly at her phone, her shoulders slumped. The boy hesitated for a moment before walking over. "Hey," he said gently, pulling out a chair. "Mind if I sit here?" The girl glanced up briefly, then nodded. They didn't talk much at first, just exchanged pleasantries about homework and weather. But the boy sensed she needed someone nearby, even if no words were spoken. Later that evening, reflecting on the encounter, he realized how easy it was to overlook those who seemed okay on the surface but might be carrying heavy burdens inside. His own experience with the splinter reminded him of this truth. Sometimes what hurts the most isn't visible right away. Inspired by this realization, the boy decided to focus on mental health awareness within the kindness crew. He proposed the idea during their next meeting, explaining that kindness wasn't just about physical acts like planting trees or delivering toys. It was also about checking in on each other, listening without judgment, and creating safe spaces where people could share their struggles. "We don't always know what someone is going through," he told the group, "but we can let them know they're not alone." The crew embraced the initiative wholeheartedly. Together, they brainstormed ideas for promoting emotional well-being. One project involved setting up a kindness mailbox at school, where students could anonymously write notes of encouragement or gratitude. Another focused on hosting workshops led by counselors and therapists, teaching coping strategies for stress and anxiety. These efforts quickly gained traction, sparking conversations that many students had been too afraid to start on their own. The kindness mailbox became especially popular. Every week, volunteers would collect the notes and distribute them to recipients, ensuring anonymity unless someone specifically requested otherwise. The boy loved reading some of the messages aloud during meetings. "Thank you for smiling at me when I felt invisible. I appreciate the way you stand up for others. Your strength inspires me." Each note carried a piece of humanity, reminding everyone of the power of simple words to heal and uplift. Meanwhile, the boy's online presence continued to expand. His video about the splinter and its lessons had gone viral, inspiring countless viewers to reflect on their own challenges and consider how they could turn pain into purpose. Messages poured in daily from people around the world, sharing their stories and thanking him for his perspective. Some wrote about overcoming illnesses, while others described battling loneliness or self-doubt. Reading these heartfelt responses reinforced the boy's belief that everyone has a story worth hearing, and that empathy connects us all. One message stood out among the rest. A young woman named Alex wrote, "Your story gave me hope when I needed it most. Last year I lost my job and struggled with depression. Watching your video made me realize that even the hardest moments can lead to growth. Now I volunteer at a shelter, helping others get back on their feet. Thank you for reminding me that kindness matters." Touched by her words, the boy replied, personally expressing gratitude for her courage and resilience. Their exchange sparked a friendship, and soon Alex began collaborating with the kindness crew, offering advice on mental health advocacy and connecting them with organizations focused on similar causes. This partnership marked a turning point, elevating the group's work to a professional level while keeping its grassroots spirit intact. Despite the growing recognition, the boy remained committed to staying humble. He often reminded himself and others that being kind doesn't require fame or resources. It starts with small intentional actions. To demonstrate this, he launched a campaign called 30 Days of Tiny Kindness, encouraging participants to perform one small act of generosity each day for a month. Examples included leaving a generous tip at a cafe, complimenting a stranger, or sending a thoughtful text to a friend. Thousands joined the challenge, flooding social media with stories of unexpected connections and moments of joy. As spring returned, painting the world in shades of green and gold, the boy reflected on how far he'd come since that confusing morning with the swollen face. Back then, he couldn't have predicted the twists and turns his life would take. Yet now, looking back, he saw beauty in the chaos, the way adversity had shaped him, teaching him to embrace uncertainty and trust in the goodness of people. One sunny afternoon, as he strolled through the park with his dog, he paused under a towering oak tree. Its branches stretched wide, casting dappled shadows on the ground below. Leaning against the trunk, he closed his eyes and listened to the rustle of leaves and distant laughter of children playing. In that peaceful moment, he felt a deep sense of contentment, not because everything was perfect, but because he was doing his best to make things better. Later that evening, during dinner with his family, the boy shared a thought that had been lingering in his mind. "You know," he said, twirling spaghetti on his fork, "I used to think my story was just about me, about how weird it was to have a splinter in my face. But now I see it differently. It's not just my story. It belongs to everyone who's ever faced something strange or scary and found a way to keep going." His parents smiled, nodding in agreement. "That's a beautiful way to look at it," his mom said softly. "And it's true. Your story has inspired so many people because it reminds them that they're stronger than they think." Encouraged by her words, the boy decided to write a letter to himself, to his future self. Pulling out a fresh sheet of paper, he began, "Dear future me, if you're reading this, I hope you've stayed true to who you are. Remember the splinter, the swelling, and the lessons they brought. Remember the faces of those you've helped, the hands you've held, and the hearts you've touched. Life will keep throwing challenges your way, but don't forget, every challenge is a chance to grow, to learn, and to give back." He sealed the letter in an envelope and tucked it away in a drawer, vowing to open it years later when he needed. A reminder of why he started this journey in the first place. Let me know if you'd like to continue expanding. Years passed, and the boy who once woke up with a swollen face grew into a young man shaped by resilience, kindness, and an unwavering desire to make a difference. The splinter that had once caused so much confusion became a symbol of his journey. A reminder that even the smallest things can have profound meaning. His life wasn't perfect. Challenges still came knocking, but he faced them with the same determination and optimism that had carried him through before. The Kindness Crew, now a well-established organization, had expanded beyond anything the boy could have imagined. What started as a small group of students meeting in a school cafeteria had transformed into a network spanning multiple towns and cities. Chapters popped up everywhere, each one inspired by the original mission, to spread kindness in creative, impactful ways. Volunteers ranged from kids to grandparents, united by the belief that every act of compassion mattered, no matter how big or small. One summer, the young man decided it was time to revisit where it all began, the tree near the river where he'd fallen and unknowingly picked up the tiny sliver of wood. He hadn't been back since the surgery, and something about returning felt important. Armed with a backpack, a notebook, and his trusty dog, he set out early in the morning, following familiar paths through the woods. The air smelled fresh, filled with the earthy scent of leaves and damp soil. When he reached the towering oak, he stopped and sat beneath its sprawling branches. Memories flooded back, the scrape of bark against skin, the sting of falling, and, later, the baffling discovery of what lay hidden inside his cheek. He chuckled softly at the absurdity of it all. Who would have thought such a random accident could lead to so much growth? Pulling out his notebook, he scribbled a few lines. "Sometimes, life gives us strange gifts wrapped in pain. But if we unwrap them carefully, we might find purpose." As he reflected, he realized how interconnected everything was. The splinter had led to the surgery, which sparked curiosity in others. That curiosity turned into conversations, projects, and eventually, a movement. And now, here he was, a person dedicated to helping others navigate their own challenges. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about everyone whose lives had touched his along the way. Later that afternoon, he visited the local hospital where doctors had performed the surgery years ago. Walking through the halls brought back vivid memories of fear and uncertainty. But this time, instead of feeling anxious, he felt grateful for the care he received, for the lessons he learned, and for the opportunity to inspire others. He stopped by the pediatric ward, surprising nurses and patients alike with his presence. Many recognized him from videos or news stories, and they greeted him warmly. He spent hours chatting with sick children, sharing his story, and encouraging them to stay hopeful. "You know," he told a shy girl clutching a stuffed rabbit, "sometimes the hardest parts of our lives teach us the coolest stuff. Like me, I got a splinter in my face and look where it took me." She giggled, her eyes lighting up. For the rest of the visit, he handed out coloring books, played board games, and listened to kids talk about their dreams. Leaving the hospital that evening, he felt lighter, as though he'd left behind a piece of joy in every room he entered. Back home, the young man continued balancing his passion for kindness with everyday responsibilities. He enrolled in college, studying biology with hopes of becoming a doctor someday. Though his schedule was packed with classes and exams, he never lost sight of his mission. Between lectures, he organized volunteer events, spoke at conferences, and mentored younger members of the kindness crew. His dual focus on academics and activism kept him grounded, reminding him why he wanted to pursue medicine in the first place. One day, while scrolling through social media, he stumbled upon a post from someone he didn't recognize. It was a photo of a handmade poster hanging in a school hallway. Written in bold letters were the words, "Be kind, you never know what someone is carrying." Below it was a drawing of a tree with deep roots labeled "The Splinter Story." The caption read, "Thank you for inspiring us to plant seeds of kindness wherever we go." Tears welled up in his eyes as he stared at the image. This was proof that his efforts weren't fleeting. They were creating lasting change. People were taking his message and making it their own, adapting it to fit their unique circumstances. It wasn't about fame or recognition anymore. It was about leaving a legacy of love and empathy. In the years that followed, the young man's influence only grew. He graduated at the top of his class and went on to medical school, combining his love for science with his passion for helping others. During clinical rotations, he often shared snippets of his story with patients, using humor and vulnerability to build trust. Many walked away not just healed physically, but emotionally uplifted too. Eventually, he fulfilled his dream of becoming a doctor, a role that allowed him to solve mysteries within the human body while continuing to champion kindness. In his free time, he wrote a book titled From Splinters to Seeds, Turning Challenges into Compassion. It became a bestseller, resonating with readers worldwide who saw themselves in his journey. Schools adopted it as required reading, sparking discussions about resilience, gratitude, and community. But perhaps the most rewarding moments came when former classmates, neighbors, and even strangers reached out to thank him. Some credited the kindness crew with saving them during tough times. Others said his story gave them courage to face their fears. Each message reinforced what he'd always believed. Kindness is contagious. When you plant a seed of hope in someone's heart, it grows into something beautiful and spreads far beyond what you can see. On a quiet evening decades later, the now elderly man sat on his porch, watching fireflies dance in the twilight. Beside him lay the envelope containing the letter he'd written to himself years ago. With trembling hands, he opened it and read the words penned by his younger self. They brought tears to his eyes, not because they were sad, but because they reminded him of how far he'd come. Closing the letter, he leaned back in his chair, smiling faintly. Life had thrown its share of curveballs, but he'd faced them head-on, turning obstacles into opportunities. The splinter in his cheek had been more than just a bizarre twist of fate. It had been a catalyst for growth, connection, and purpose. And though his body aged, his spirit remained youthful, fueled by the belief that kindness could heal wounds invisible to the eye. As the stars began to twinkle above, he whispered to the night sky, "Thank you. Thank you for the splinter, the swelling, and the lessons they brought. Thank you for the people who supported him along the way. And thank you for showing him that even the smallest acts of kindness could create ripples that lasted a lifetime. Because, in the end, it wasn't about the splinter itself. It was about what it revealed. The incredible capacity of the human heart to overcome, to connect, and to transform pain into purpose. Let me know if you'd like any final touches or adjustments.